The ships did not move, they simply waited. 12 hulls, 2 kilometers each, hung at the edge of the system where the Mirathi Index sat in its dead moon. Their metal read older than the Concord. Their signal read one word, repeating, status. Prefect Brand-Jev stood at the observation port. His left hand was still. The administrative stamp prosthetic, which clicked when he was agitated, had not clicked in 6 minutes. Across 6 campaigns, he had never not known what stamp to use. In the small room off Chamber 7 Omega, a man held a ceramic cup of tea. The cup was warm. He had not spoken since waking. He looked at the ships. He looked at the cup. He said one word. Active. What happened next? I wish I could say it ended with the vote, stay close. 6 hours earlier, the Korathi Assembly had cast its ballots. The vote was 4,891 to 89. The margin was not close enough to be interesting. The margin was close enough to be terrifying. Jev pressed his stamp hand to the order. The click echoed through the chamber. Then he went to polish his armor. The Mirathi Index was 300 meters of cold stone, ozone, and organic stabilizers. Archivist Mev had cataloged 9,400 artifacts in 734 years. He had never opened one. The rule was absolute: never open what you cannot read. The pod sat at the far end, 4 meters long, 1 meter wide, metal that showed no corrosion after 30,000 years. Inside, a man lay with scarred work hands folded across his chest. A carbon steel caliper gauge hung at his belt. The gauge was the only thing in the pod that looked used. Everything else had been built to outlast empires. Only the gauge had been built to measure them. Scholar Zell, 2,100 years old, 4 eyes catching the amber light, leaned close to Mev. The glyphs do not say resting. They say, do not wake him unless the war is already won, or already lost. Jev overheard, his crested head tilted, primitive theatrics. The seal was going to break. Mev knew it. His secondary mandibles clicked once, then again. He had counted 340 conferences about this pod in 900 years. The Concord's linguists had failed for 900 years. The pod had been here longer than the Mirathi had been keepers. 2 humans entered the chamber. Captain Joss Now, 32, wore a flight jacket with 12 mission patches. She did not run. She walked to the pod and stood there. Dr. Ellis Pike, 57, carried a leather satchel. He opened it. 9 photographs of old Earth. He held one up. Mountains, golden in fading light. Garrick Sloane's eyes opened. No stiffness, no confusion. He sat up in one motion. He touched the caliper gauge at his belt. He looked at his hands. He looked at Jev's black nickel armor. He looked at the 300-meter chamber. He looked at Now. She nodded once. The nod that passes between people who share a language older than diplomacy. Pike held the photograph steady. Garrick's eyes moved to the mountains, then to Pike, then to the chamber wall. He said nothing. Jev stepped forward. His ceremonial armor gleamed. 6 campaign ribbons hung from his shoulder. Each represented a species subdued without a shot fired. Garrick Sloane, by order of the Galactic Concord, you are now classified. Garrick swung his legs over the pod's edge. He stood. He was shorter than Jev. His dark hair was graying at the temples. His hands were scarred from construction work, not combat. He reached into the pod wall. His fingers found a seam. No Mirathi instrument had ever detected it. A panel opened. Inside, a device, 15 centimeters, same uncorrupted metal. Garrick pressed his thumb to it. It chimed. A frequency the repository sensors could not register. Mev's mandibles clicked 12 times in 3 seconds. Somewhere, 43 relay stations woke. Somewhere, 9 systems the Concord called uninhabited blinked. Somewhere, 12 ships that had been waiting in the dark for 30,000 years received a signal they were built to receive. Vale, Mev's assistant, dropped her data crystal. It clattered on the stone. Jev's stamp hand clicked rapidly, not agitation, something the Korathi had no word for. Mev checked the repository logs. The signal had reached 43 relay stations, 9 systems, 12 ships. None of them existed in the Concord database. None of them had ever existed. The signal did not travel through known space. It traveled through something else. Garrick walked to the small room off the chamber. Vale found a ceramic cup in a storage locker. He filled it with tea. He sat. He looked at the cup. He looked at the wall where the signal had originated. 6 hours later, the ships appeared. They did not move toward the index. They did not move at all. They simply existed. 2 kilometers of hull that predated every Korathi campaign, every Myrathi conference, every Valen warning. Jev stood at the observation port. His stamp hand was still. For the first time in 6 campaigns, he did not know what stamp to use. The ships did not fire, they did not threaten, they simply waited. Mev stood beside him. His mandibles did not click. He understood, finally, what the Valen had been trying to tell the galaxy for 4,000 years. Some species do not conquer. They simply arrive. And arriving is enough. Garrick's voice came from behind them, quiet. You wanted to see what was inside, now you know. The ceramic cup in his hand was still warm. 48 hours later, the tribunal chamber held no Korathi stamp hand clicking. No Valen whispers. Only the sound of Mev's testimony being recorded for the Concord archives. The first entry in 11,000 years that the Myrathi did not know how to classify. Jev sat in the gallery. His black nickel armor had been polished for the occasion. The same polish he used before announcing a new subjugation. He did not speak. His stamp hand twitched but did not click. He was waiting for Garrick to gloat. Garrick did not gloat. Garrick did not speak at all. The Concord had convened emergency session 23 times in 9,200 years, always for species being annihilated, never for the aggressor. This was the 24th. The vote to censure the Korathi opening was 6,800 to 89. The 89 delegates who voted to open the pod voted to censure themselves. Mev on the witness stand was asked what humanity was. He thought of Now's 12 mission patches. He thought of Pike's 9 photographs. He thought of Garrick's scarred work hands. He said, I thought they were quiet because they were small. I was wrong. They were quiet because they were finished measuring. Sector 4 Alpha was no longer uninhabited. The 12 ships remained at the system's edge. They had not moved in 6 months. They did not need to. Every species in the Concord now routed their travel plans around Sector 4 Alpha, not because they were told to, because 12 ships taught them what waiting looks like when it stops waiting. Garrick stood at the vote table where 4,891 delegates had ordered him opened. He set the carbon steel caliper gauge on the polished surface. The tool that measured gaps in steel now measured the gap between what the galaxy believed and what it must now learn. It was still warm. It had been warm for 30,000 years. It would be warm when the galaxy finished recalibrating. The gauge was still ticking when the galaxy recalibrated.